Hello, my name is Roman Gingiashvili, and today's topic is actually a very interesting topic. It's French, but not the French we ever made DVD on. And I always thought that French was kind of boring, and I was never recommending for black because position is kind of passive. And also I recommended bishop d2 variation in regular in a normal bishop after normal bishop b4. Okay, that was okay, and that stands the way it was. But right now, well, since bishop b4 was by far most interesting, most popular continuation, we weren't particularly paying too much attention to knight f6 move and variation. So the variation I'm going to analyze today is a Bern variation, and I think this is the most popular thing today in French. And I did not think that I would be ever so excited to working on this variation. Variation goes bishop g5. Of course, there is a move e5 for white, but this is completely different matter. Bishop g5 is more popular variation. And now d takes e4, knight takes e4, and bishop e7. Now, what is here? So what can be so exciting here for white? This is extremely rich position with possibilities both sides. So white plays bishop takes f6 and g takes f. Black allows double pawns and compromised king side position, but they have bishop pair and very good chances for counterplay. This variation was very successfully played by black, by Morozevich, and he had very good results. And then it was picked up by a number of other strong players, and it was doing very well, almost replacing main variations of French for black. So white plays normal move knight f3, and idea is to play a6 and b5 here, and possible b5 after that. But in order to do that, black should play f5 first. Although Morozevich himself played number of times a6, which gave white a very good position. Well, a6, white has to act correctly. So first of all, there is a good chances they have after c4, and when black plays f5, then knight c3, and black does not have sufficient counterplay. The reason why f5 has to be played first, there is another reason why f5 has to be played first, because if black goes a6, white can go g3, and after b5, bishop g2, And we're going to see now big difference. And after bishop b7, queen e2. And when white castles long, they will have better position. Black still is going to have significant difficulties creating counterplay because f5, after f5, white is not going to play knight c3, blocking the c pawn and putting knight on possibly vulnerable position. So, of course, white would play knight d2, intending to go to b3 and c5. So this is why f5 has to be played first. And let me explain you why it makes difference. Why can't white do the same thing? Knight d2, and after a6, g3, b5, bishop g2, bishop b7, queen e2. Of course, white can do that, but black will not be playing like this. And here is the reason why f5 is necessary move. Because now on any retreat of the knight, besides c3, for example, knight g3 or knight d2, after c5, black has very good position. White cannot play d5, and black comfortably develops after taking on d4 and knight c6. Black has absolutely no difficulties in the opening. Move f5 practically forces white to play knight c3 because it's not in white's best interest to let black go c5 without a problem. f5, knight c3, c5 is not that good because of d5 move. But now black can continue their normal development with a6 and b5 when white's knight is not placed on c3 in the best position on c3. So when white plays knight c3, now a6, and we get to the best variety for black of the Morozevich or Byrne variation. It has two different names. It has Byrne because it was always called Byrne for many years, but some people call it Morozevich because Morozevich started playing with a6 and b5, and he put his own flavor there for the whole variation. So, before we start analyzing all these positions in details, I have to mention that besides a6 and f5, there is also an old move, b6. That's how Byrne variation was played for decades almost. Well, we are not going to analyze these positions. All I can tell you, the way it's played for white: bishop c4, b7, queen e2, c6, castle, queen c7, and later black plays knight d7. Black has no weaknesses but has very passive position. This variation and this way to play never had too many followers for black, and there is nothing new in it. White is better and has space and positional advantage for a long time. So let's go back to the our main moves. I already explained why a6 is not that great, because we go g3, and now after b5, bishop g2, and on bishop b7, queen e2, knight can be retreated to d2 and b3 after f5. So we determined that that's what makes f5 is the main move here. And now we go knight c3, and white goes a6. The best way to play for, and black goes a6, best way to play for white is g3, b5, bishop g2, bishop b7, and this is critical position of whole variation. Now, the reason I'm bringing this variation for you, you may ask, am I going to show how to play it for white? Am I showing it for white, or am I showing it for black? Well, my answer to this is that I'm not showing for white or for black. I'm just analyzing very, very interesting and dynamically very rich position of chess. And some of you guys may pick up for ways to play opening, for the ways to play against this variation, and some of them may like and start playing this variation for black. For example, my friend and also Ripka team member Larry Kaufman, we were trying to find a good way to play good advantage, to find good advantage for white, and he started liking it so much that he started playing it for black, and he was very, very successful with it, and he had some great results playing it, and actually this variation even helped him to win a World Senior Championship last year. So this position is critical. Actually, Larry Kaufman wrote a big article in New in Chess about this variation, and we spend, particularly Larry, spent a lot of times with Ripka, and Ripka gave almost exhausting analysis, totally exhaustive analysis and complete analysis of this position. And it's extremely rich position for both sides. White has two moves here, castle and queen e2. Well, let's look at this position in the order, in any order. So let's look at the castle. Now, castle is very, very interesting move. The other interesting move that has its own advantages is queen e2, as I already mentioned. But after castle, in this position, black has several possibilities, and well, actually I would say normally two possibilities: castle or knight d7. The only other option besides that is c5. Actually, in order of preference, I would put castle first for black, second c5, which is extremely sharp move, and I will show you why, and then knight d7. Let's start with the least popular, knight d7, and I don't really like that move this much, because if white plays queen e2 and rook d1, black is going to have very hard time creating sufficient counterplay. So knight d7 is first move. The other move is castle. Now this may be recommended as well as c5. After castle, there were a number of games played, and knight e5 is the move that was played in several games, and black has to take on g2, king takes, and now of course c5 doesn't look good after d5 or queen f3. So in this position, knight d7 doesn't look good because of knight c6 as well. Black must go b4. The best move in this position is knight a4. That leads to very balanced position. In my opinion, this position is very close to equal, although, if you look at this position, it doesn't look very good for black. White has better development, black has compromised king position, but after queen d5 check, and now white has two choices whether to play king g1 or queen f3, in which cases queens will be exchanged, doesn't matter which way black takes, and after white takes, and after rook d8, black has very good equalizing chances, bishop f6, and position is maybe tiny advantage for white, but nothing seriously dangerous for black. And the other move is king g1, is also after knight c6. Position is almost equal. This is not my opinion. This position was analyzed further. I don't think we should stop and analyze it in details. Position is approximately equal. So there is no advantage here for white. In the game, actually very important game for Larry in World Championship, on b4, his opponent was another grandmaster, made most likely, most logical move, and looks like it's a very good move, queen f3, which in reality is not that good. With the best play after queen f3, black is going to have some little advantage, but white wasn't playing it best, and white lost quickly. I just show you what happened. The reason why queen f3 is dubious, because black must sacrifice the exchange, white must take the rook. Now queen takes d4, attacking the knight, and there were actually games played with it. I'm going to show you both games. Larry's game was actually practically 2 moves long from here. 2 moves long, because in this position his opponent made absolutely horrible mistake and lost game immediately. In his game was knight f3, and after queen b6, white's queen on a8 is trapped, because knight on f3 took the only escape square for a8 queen, and after knight c6, queen is simply trapped. And in the other game, was played, knight d3. Game ended in a draw, but black had an advantage and missed an opportunity to get very favorable endgame. So this position is absolutely playable for black. So I just showed you castling move. But before castling was played, which some people didn't like to play because of knight e5, and as we just saw, it's nothing really terrible here. The other way to play for black is c5. Well, c5 move is very controversial and very, very sharp move. If white plays d takes c, after queen takes d1, rook takes d1, and bishop takes c5, it's hard to even imagine that white can have any advantage here. So this was by far number one and most important reason why white wouldn't castle here. But then there was a game between Ivanchuk and Volkov, another pretty strong Russian grandmaster. And in this position, Ivanchuk played d5. That's what makes this position extremely sharp. After d5, position is razor sharp because this is practically a piece sacrifice. White is sacrificing a knight by playing this move. Well, obviously, black is not going to take on d5, where white has big advantage after knight e5. Now d5 pawn is pinned and folds. Next move, after knight d7, simply bishop takes d5, gives white nearly decisive advantage. So, and white doesn't want to allow DE ruining their pawn structure, so they play b4, and this is a very, very interesting piece sacrifice because white must take on e6. Now, I would say this is one of the key positions of whole variation, and this was extensively analyzed by Rybka. Rybka went to hours of analysis, and if we consider the quality of Rybka's analysis when she has a lot of time, this is absolutely immaculate analysis, and still position is evaluated by Rybka as almost equal in not in a way of drawish. No, white is going to be pieced down almost to the end of the game, and they will have always sufficient compensation. Very, very interesting position, and that's why I said I'm not recommending this, and I'm not analyzing this for white only, because if I was analyzing only for white, then I would have told you on a previous moves to play in this position queen e2 or castle. No, this analyzed by both sides. So if you like to play positions, sharp positions for black, you would go c5, d5, b4. If you like quiet positions for black, you would go castle. In both cases, black should fight for equal chances, but they have good chance of succeeding. And again, white after c5, after c5, white can go to quiet position, but then they will not have any advantage. So this is very lively variations, and I find it's very difficult to predict that this kind of variation in French defense can have such a rich possibilities. To me, and I have seen quite a few opening analysis, this is absolutely amazing and very fascinating. So now I already showed you what happens after castle here. So after castling, there is no, b4 is not good, and followed by bishop c6, thus, but then white will simply go b3, and I'm going to show you game on that too. And the taking on a4, of course, is very bad for black, because white's light square bishop becomes uncontested, and black is going to have very difficult position, very hard time to keep their position together. So practically two moves here by black is castling, which after knight e5 leads to the position we already looked at, and razor sharp c5, d5, b4, de. We're going to analyze in the end of the DVD, in a game section of it, so which we're going to have conclusion of this DVD will be game section. We will be analyzing briefly, because if you want complete analysis of d takes e, I will need another 4-hour DVD separately maybe. But I will show you what you're going to be facing and what type of position you can expect, and you're going to judge whether you want to play it or not. But for now, I already gave you, I outlined what happens on the castle. The only move we didn't analyze extensively is knight d7, but after queen e2, it's a highly unpleasant position for black. And we already analyzed castle for white, and now I want to look for the other move, which is a queen e2. Queen e2 practically gives black 4 choices. One is a castle. Second is b4. Third is c5. And fourth is queen d6. Now let's keep them in this order, and let's start looking at these variations. Queen e2. The advantages of queen e2 move is, we know that most of the time white will castle short, but this move also gives white an opportunity to castle long if necessary. And on c5 now, for example, if black goes c5 now, white can simply take on c5, and this is not going to be very pleasant for black, because now they cannot exchange queens, and they cannot even take on c5, because double attack on bishop and rook is going to end the game. So queen e2 has its own advantages, and let's start looking with all these four variations I just mentioned, and let's start with a castle. And now, after castling, white has to make one very important, very accurate move if they want to have a chance to get any advantage. And the move is rook d1. It's a little bit strange why we have to go rook d1. Why don't we castle here on a long side? Or if we don't want to castle long, why don't we castle short? Why it has to be rook d1? And here is why. If white castles short, what happens? Black goes b4. This is the type of position white wants, with only little exception. In this particular position, knight a4 move that they place for knight to go, black has unexpected bishop c6, attacking the knight, and threatening bishop b5, winning in exchange, which forces white to play knight e5 to avoid material losses. And then after bishop takes g2, this was very well analyzed by Ripka, king takes g2, and black must accept pawn sacrifice on d4, and after rook a d1, queen e4. And the position is very balanced. Black has an extra pawn. Black is behind in development. And there is no good place to develop this b8 knight, but after bishop f6, knight can be developed to c6. Black has an extra pawn which probably will be lost in a couple of moves. So position is equal. There are little variations, not too complicated. So that's why white don't want to castle short. But if they castle long, this is a possibility, but according to Ripka, and I agree with it, with her 100%, after b4, knight a4, bishop d5. A logical move, king b1, knight c6. And later, either knight c6, so probably even more accurate, queen d7 first. And after b3, knight c6. They are okay position, and normally in this type of situation, when black mounts some piece on d5, white should be reacting with c4 and then take back with a knight. But you don't want to do it when your king is on b file on a queen side. You want to do it if you castled short, and we will see it. So this is the reason why white plays rook d1 in this position and not castling short or long side. So this is the reason why they play rook d1. And when black goes b4, this is the best way to play for black. Knight a4, bishop c6. Now white can go b3, because taking, again, I have to mention that black cannot afford give white uncontested bishop on this powerful diagonal. So what will happen here is after b3, black can go knight d7, and white will go c4, b takes c, knight takes c3, knight b6, castle. According to Ripka, and I agree 100% that white has here some advantage. Knight is going to go to e5 because all black's pawns are kind of weak, and that's not the position black wants to play. This position gives white some advantage. Now, let's go. Well, as we mentioned, there are number of other moves besides castling. There is b4, c5, and queen d6 left. Let's look at them. On move b4, of course we have to go to a4, and now black has choices between castling, going bishop c6, and queen d5. Now we are not going to look at castling because after rook d1 we have 100% transposition from this variation. If we black castled early and rook d1 before knight a4, then we have position transposes. So after b4 knight a4, we just look at two moves, bishop c6 and queen d5. Well, on bishop c6 we will simply go knight c5, and this is not a pleasant position for black. Bishop takes c5, dc is going to be very dangerous, and going after this pawn, especially if you are not guaranteed to get it, and even after this, even if you win a pawn, position will be very dangerous. Now black has no chance of castling on queen side, and this position is not very good. Well, as far as the queen d5 move goes, white is simply going to castle, and here white will have no more than some positional advantage in the end game if black goes queen b5. Then we go queen e5. This is the move that gives white an advantage. And after queen e5, of course taking knight is not good because black's rook is hanging, and if black castles, white doesn't want to take on b5 and give black open a file, and b3. This type of positions and endgame, I think it's highly favor white. I would highly favor white here because white has good outposts for knight on c4 and the other on a4. Pawn structure is not that great for black, and they have problem solving. They have a knight problem to solve on b8. So this position is some advantage for white. So when we look at that, it seems like endless possibilities for both sides. That's what makes this variation, this position, so interesting and so exciting. So now let's go back to this position when black plays bishop b7. Now we go queen e2. So we looked already at castling and we looked at b4. So we have practically two moves left, c5, which I don't think we should spend more than a few seconds, because after d takes c and white simply goes rook d1 first, I already mentioned bishop takes c5 loses to queen e5. c5 is not really a valid option, and only other move we can look at is queen d6. The idea of queen d6 is to develop knight on d7 without blocking queen on d8 and possibly castling long. So what happens after queen d6? Of course, white should simply castle, and now when black plays knight d7, white has a very powerful move d5, giving them sizable advantage. Ed is absolutely not acceptable, because after knight d4, black is probably going to lose in a few moves. f5 is hanging pawn, rook e1 is coming, rook d1, and king is stuck in its center. Black is absolutely hopeless. And if black castles as they intended, we simply can go rook f e1, and white has very large advantage. This is not a good way to play for black. So the probably conclusion is, after queen e2, the best answer for black is castle, which gives white some advantage that we looked already, and that we may come even to conclusion about this position. When I told you here white has queen e2 move and castling move, why I didn't say that queen e2 is a better move? The reason why I didn't say that, based on what we looked at, queen e2 is a better move, but castling is also good. But if c5 d5, since analyses are not complete, we don't know for sure if white can go for more. So as for now, queen e2 is number one choice. And that does not mean that it's final, but this, as I already mentioned, I repeat myself, and position is so rich that this may change. Maybe in a year or two, we're going to make another DVD, kind of refuting what we said. Position again is very rich and is normally in chess. Theory is being rewriting every now and then, and that's why it's not even 100% clear which continuation is the best. Now, we're going to look at some other variations that we haven't looked yet. In the earlier stage of this variation, in this position, if white decides to play different way, queen e2. Now, this is the recommendation that was given by number of opening books, and even I gave it in my book with the opening repertoire for white, that there is a good way to place queen e2 and on b5 castling long, and after b4 going knight a4. Now here is advantages of analyzing in depth this position, actually any position of the opening with the Ripka giving extensive and detailed analysis. This position, originally known as a sizable advantage for white, after queen d5, c4, bc, knight takes c3, and we say that white has good advantage, is 100% accurate, and it's correct. However, after queen a5, the evaluation in this position is absolutely changing. White is almost have to play here queen e5 and not b3. We mentioned that after b3 this is much better for white, and here is why. On queen e5, first of all, if white plays queen e5, black can simply take and go bishop b7. They have absolutely no problems in this position because knight easily developed on d7. Knight on a4 is not such a greatly placed. So, let's see what's the difference in b3. We looked, of course, in bishop d7 move. Now knight c5, bishop takes c5, d takes c, queen takes c5, and knight e5, correctly evaluating this position as very dangerous for black. However, here comes the different move, knight c6, which radically changes whole evaluation of this position. Black is doing absolutely fine here. The reason on knight g5 will be met simply by rook d8, and white has nothing to look forward to, and black is doing just fine. And in the other try for white, when after b3, bishop d7, they can try to go d5, but then also after bishop takes a4, b takes a, queen takes a4, not b3 in this position, but queen takes a4, d takes e, b3, and on ef, king takes f7. This position is better for black. White has to play for equality. Moves like knight e5, check. They don't do anything because white's king is in more danger than black's. Another very good variation for black, and another change of the previous evaluation. Well, if we have some evaluation changed by Ripka's analysis so many times, there is no guarantee that whatever we analyzed by now will not be changed. So that may be changed as well. Now what I would like to do, looks like we looked at everything, but we didn't. We didn't look, and I said a couple of things and evaluations of positions we will analyze when we look at the games. And these games that we're going to look will be crucial for final evaluation of this position. And now let's look at some games. Okay, first we look at the game in a position that we analyzed very well. In this position, when white chose to castle, knight e5, bishop takes g2, king takes g2, b4. And I already mentioned that queen f3 is most obvious move here, but not such a great move. After b takes c, queen takes a8, queen takes d4. White didn't play knight f3, that loses right away after queen b6. I already mentioned that happened in Larry Kaufman's game. But white made the correct move, knight d3. Game ended in a draw, but let me show you why this position with exchange down for black is such a good position for black. It may seem that after knight d3, queen b6, threatening to trap the queen, and queen f3, c takes b, rook a b1. It may seem that white is doing real well, because you may think that pawn on b2 is going to be lost, and then they have exchange and their king is not in danger. But it's not so easy to get the b2 pawn. What happened in this game, played by two very strong players, bishop f6, rated 24 and between 24 and 2600. Actually, player with white was rated 2450, and player with black was 2580. So it's a FIDE rating. So we can trust them. They know what they are doing. They may not be making the best moves, but everything they do makes sense. In this position, white played knight takes b2, bishop takes b2, and c3. Of course, white is going to win this bishop on b2. Then after c3, knight d7 was played. That's correct move. Rook fe1, and here black made a mistake. They played knight c5, and game ended in a draw after queen e1, queen e3, and in a couple of moves it ended in a draw. Well, white actually is giving the perpetual check, queen g5, queen f6. Now let's see what black has missed here. Black has missed here very, very strong move, that is f6. After f6, white has serious problems, and to avoid the disaster, they must go rook e2 to get the bishop right away. You see the point of f6, black is preparing platform square e5 for knight. After rook e2, knight e5, white cannot move the queen. If queen is moved anywhere, queen c6 check will win the game, because then either bishop can move or white has big problems with their king as well. Rook takes b2 must be played. Knight takes f3. This is all forced, the best white can hope for. And after b5, black has an extra pawn and seemingly good winning chances. Well, that would have been if after f6 white made the best move. Again, critical position is after knight d3, queen b6, every move is forced, queen f3 to take the queen out of danger, cb, rook b1, bishop f6. The only move is not forced, knight takes b2 right away. But on the other hand, how long can you tolerate the b2 pawn? Black has total material compensation, and they are threatening to go knight c6 and knight d4. So knight takes b2, bishop takes b2, rook rook f d1, actually rook f e1, knight d7, c3, and move missed by black was f6. Okay, this is one game that is very typical for this variation. Now I want you to see, I want to analyze the most important game maybe of all variation that we said, where we said white sacrifices a piece, and this is crucial game for understanding, for evaluating one of the key positions of all variation. This is Ivanchuk-Volkov game. The next game, this game is also very, very typical for this variation, and I want you to look. I particularly like this game because it was played between two very strong players, 2,600 FIDE rated players, two grandmasters, and of course they don't play perfectly, but it's very high level, and how some interesting position may occur and some interesting tactical possibilities are hidden in this type of opening. Now, in this position, black, we already looked at this position, we know this position, where white played without g3, we said b4, knight a4, and queen d5 is okay for black, at least okay. Because queen d5 must be played, because on c4, not bc as books recommended for black, but the queen a5, b3, bishop d7. I quickly gonna repeat myself, and knight c6. Black is doing very well. However, German grandmaster that was playing for black, he played differently, bishop b7 move, and he didn't know probably in-depth analysis of this variation. He made very natural move, bishop b7, and immediately got into trouble. Immediately. After knight e5, all of a sudden, white wants to go knight c5, and also possibly queen h5. He got scared mostly of queen h5 move, so he went h5, trying to prevent it. But that's another loss of tempo. Now knight c5 is coming. So I told you there were two ideas, queen h5 or knight c5. One was stopped, the other occurred. So knight c5, bishop d5, and now white plays queen e1. Well, obviously because to develop this bishop on f1. a5, king b1, c6, probably trying to prevent bishop b5 check, h4, and now black has difficulties to finish development. They cannot go knight d7 because there are two knights. They cannot go knight a6 because bishop is opened. That loses two. What is for them to do? f6 will be met by knight g6. So black played bishop takes c5, dc, queen e7. White went c4. Black's position is already very bad. Now, taking bc will be positionally devastating because white completely dominates position on every inch of the board, on a king side, queen side, in the center. So BC was not played, bishop e4 check, and after bishop e4 check, bishop d3, queen takes c5, and f4. Black is up a pawn, very insignificant, very unimportant pawn, because they have problems a lot bigger than a pawn. Their problems is what to do with the king, number one problem, and number two, how to finish development. And those problems are connected. So after f4, f6 was played. They're hoping that knight will retreat and they will somehow develop. But queen g3, very strong move. And after queen g3, queen e7 was played. Well, obviously taking the knight is absolutely crushing after queen g6 check. Now, if king goes up, they're gonna lose a rook. If king goes to f8, that's gonna be not better. Rook d8 will be coming. So taking of a knight is out of question. Queen e7. But now bishop takes e4. After queen e7, fe, queen g6 check. Actually, bishop takes e4. Pawn cannot take on e4 because of knight g6, or queen g6 check. Queen g6 check, just actually it's an instant mate. After king f8, rook d8 check. Queen takes and queen f7 mate. So fe has to be played. Now queen g6 check. King f8. And white played bishop takes f5. Now after bishop takes f5, there is no way black can defend their position, but even stronger was rook hf1, and if pawn takes, then there will be a mate, and also white is threatening fe. Black is totally lost now. So what happened is, as I mentioned, bishop takes f5, knight a6, bishop takes e6, queen h7, queens were exchanged. Black is down 2 pawns. Eventually black lost the game. We don't have to continue from now. To me, it's very instructive game. How one little mistake, black has to be very careful. Black has two bishops. They have some good positional prospects, but they cannot fall way behind in development. There is always a danger their king can never survive. So that's what makes this position, this opening, is so interesting. So for the conclusion, I want to make few points here. So as I already mentioned, I'm not making any claims that this variation gives advantage to one or to the other side. All I'm saying, the stuff that you saw, most of it is absolutely new, thanks to Larry Kaufman and also to, obviously, to Ripka. And we made some incredible progress in analyzing this variation, getting very exciting positions that are very playable for both sides. And if you want to take a part in inventing of researching something in the opening, and research in the opening has incredible value, because that makes you understand the opening very deeply, and that makes you have your own stuff that you most likely will be knowing better than your opponent. And this is the perfect opening to make further developments. As for black, I was never a big fan of playing French. I was never a big fan of French defense for black, but if I knew that I can get this variation, I would definitely play it, and for enjoyment and for research purposes. But when you play black, you never know when your opponent is gonna depart. So I wouldn't want to play against this, or I wouldn't want to play against this, or I wouldn't want to play against this either. So, well, but for white, since I am advocating bishop g5 move, I have to make these researches for white, and for black, for the sake of research. So we have to do that for white and for black. I still recommend you to play it for both sides. Now, as for white, I want to tell you that when you play knight c3 move, you may face all kind of continuations like this, or this, or well, bishop d7, bishop e7. So this is all, there is nothing new. That's why I'm not touching it, I'm not analyzing. I don't have any new researches on my own that I can offer. So, well, if you have something like this happening in your game, as well as bishop e7 move, for example, well, I would recommend you to take some, any book is going to help you, any theoretical manual, so that has it analyzed, it will give you good guidance. But completely different story is this Morozevich variation that offers incredibly interesting, rich, tactically and positionally possibilities. And this is the way you also learn a lot about chess game. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy playing Morozevich variation, and against it as well, Morozevich a Bern variation that offers so much interesting chess.